I would be lying if I said I was a fan of the Fast and the Furious franchise. I was too young to really care or remember the first two, and I still to this day think Tokyo Drift is a pile of garbage. However, starting with Fast 5, the films still were nothing special, but the franchise started to fully realize itself and put some real talent behind the camera like James Wan and now F. Gary Gray. So the film is about Dom going rogue after meeting with the mysterious woman played by Charlize Theron, and the gang has to come together to stop him before he and Charlize Theron can complete their villainous plan. So based off that small synopsis, you can already tell that you aren't going to be getting a fantastic story, and I bet you already know where this film is going. The first thing that comes to mind is most likely correct about the direction of this film. That being said, for the most part, the plot isn't horrible, but it isn't anything new or very well written. It is a definition of meh. To some, that is fine as long as the characters, action, and other elements are on point, but if you're that kind of person, then this film might not be for you. Like most blockbusters, the film is structured around 3 major set pieces where the stakes get higher and higher, but the major problem with the film is that when the epic action scenes are not occurring, the plot does not do a good enough job at connecting the tissue between each action scene. Thus, you're on a roller coaster that varies so starkly that the lows are very low and the highs don't have the same impact because of the lows. The movie tries so hard to get you to care for what is going on and feel for the characters, but it never dives deeper than the surface level, leaving you ultimately uninterested in the outcome of the film. Also, because the movie is so predictable and so similar to the past Fast and Furious movies, it really isn't satisfying, because it does nothing interesting or new with its already established characters and world. For crying out loud, this is the 8th movie. This should not be happening. The last thing I will say to drive home the point is that the story builds up what should be the most emotional, character-driven, and impactful film in the franchise yet, but is too afraid to go away from the conventions of the franchise to do anything new. Whereas the last 3 movies seem to be a step in the right direction, this one is a step back, and that is the major flaw with this entry into the franchise. I have genuinely enjoyed most of the main characters in the Fast and Furious films. However, I will also be the first one to say that most of them get little to no character development, and this entry is no different. So let's start with arguably the main character of the Fast and Furious films, Dom, played by Vin Diesel. I'm gonna be honest, I have never and probably will never characterize Vin Diesel as a good actor, but this is definitely his best performance yet. Take that compliment as you wish. However, Dom is put in a position where he has to betray his family, and for the most part, he is the most well-fleshed out character and is the focal point of the film. His characterization is nothing special and quite predictable, but it does lead to some potent and touching scenes. I really want to highlight this next character because I believe that they are the worst part of the film, and that is Letty, played by Michelle Rodriguez. Michelle Rodriguez's acting chops are similar to Vin Diesel in my eyes, but that doesn't really matter because Letty is the worst character in this film. She was never a great character, but this is really bad. Her character is Dom's soulmate, but if you were to tell me that was the case with no prior knowledge, I would scoff. Her character is not only given such little screen time that she desperately needs, but the film never properly shows her anger and frustration with Dom's betrayal. The 2 main characters of this film should have been her and Dom, but the writers gave her nothing to work with. Michelle Rodriguez might not be a great actress, but even she couldn't sell this hogwash. For the next characters, I can only truly discuss them as a pair. That pair is Hobbs and Deckard, played by The Rock and Jason Statham respectively. Again, as I have said, you should have no illusion of these guys getting any proper characterization, but whenever these guys are on screen, it is a blast. And I would wager Jason actually steals the show with a few scenes in this movie, and I'd argue he's a far better sidekick than a villain. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, to me, is the new Will Smith. Whether the film is good or bad, they elevate it and at least make it a good time. But him paired with Jason was magic, and I'm excited to see them together in future films. Charlize Theron plays a villain in this installation of the franchise, and I would say she's honestly the best villain this series has had so far. Like many things with this franchise, that is not saying much, but Charlize Theron does a knock-up job. The character she plays, though, is lacking severely in the motivation department. We never know why she's doing what she's doing, but we know she's bad. This villain archetype is rampant throughout several blockbusters, but I will say the writers did a great job with her and Dom's interactions. These were the best written and acted scenes in the whole movie and showed a glimpse of true promise. Sadly, it was only a glimpse and never became fully realized. As for the rest of the cast, I don't expect them all to be well fleshed out because large ensemble casts like this can't possibly develop all the characters, so they really just need to be believable and fit the role the plot desires. For the most part, the rest of the cast does a bang-up job. Tyrese and Ludacris's banter will never get old, and Nathalie Emmanuel, even though her role seems quite useless since Ludacris is already the brains of the operations, definitely fends for herself and is a welcome addition. However, that leaves Scott Eastwood, who seems to be Paul Walker light, but he does not hold his own at all with these other powerhouses. He is basically the butt of all the jokes in the movie, and nothing would have changed whether he was in the movie or not. Sorry, Clint Eastwood, your son just isn't living up to your name. Stephen F. Winden was a cinematographer for The Fate of the Furious and the last 4 Fast and Furious films, thus you already know what you're getting into visually for this film. He knows how to shoot cars and make people look really good, but it can look at times a bit glossy and overlit. Also, this isn't completely in his wheelhouse, but the CGI looks very noticeably bad at times. However, we can clearly see his development as a cinematographer because without a doubt, the last 4 Fast and Furious films have gotten better and better looking, so he has clearly improved over time. But you can really see F. Gary Gray's influence on this film. F. Gary Gray is a director of The Italian Job and most recently Straight Outta Compton. If you've seen those films, you already know that he knows how to direct. Whether you like those films or not, you'd be hard-pressed to say they weren't very well composed. His expertise oozes on the screen, and he not only delivers the best action scenes that are clear and not shaky like some of the past entries, but he truly understands how to shoot people in varying emotional states. It is due to this shot composition and actor direction that the jokes land better than ever before, but he also captures the emotional weight in a scene which has been severely lacking in other entries. It is just sad that no matter how well you direct, you cannot cover up bad writing, so I can't wait for him to get more work and better work. There really isn't much to say about this score. Like most blockbusters with scores that rarely leave an impact, The Fate of the Furious is no different. The music sounds and feels the same as the past films, and the composer Brian Tyler's most notable work has been the Thor films, so you shouldn't expect much. The Fate of the Furious honestly had a lot going for it, with good actors, great direction, and what seemed to be the most impactful storyline in the franchise so far. However, this is a perfect example of how mediocre and or uncreative writing can cover all the good. It seems as if they focused too much on the jokes and banter and forgot that we need to connect to characters on more than just jokes. So after compiling all the scores, I give The Fate of the Furious a C, with a stamp. Well, this is a Film Domain, and I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe if you'd like, and also check out some other videos.